Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today going to be talking about Blood Death Knight tanking. Um, a lot has changed for Blood Death Knight, and I will hold true to the fact that this is an unplayable tank. However, with that being said, there are a lot of people out there who are able to do good damage with this tank. There are people out there who are able to keep up with everything, and they're able to do what they need to do to survive. I firmly believe that if you want to run the high end of keys, anything past probably like a 10, maybe an 11, you're going to have to run with a coordinated group. All right. But with that being said, let's jump into it and let's go over what all everything is. All right. So Blood Death Knight is by far the hardest tank in the game to play because you have so many different things that you have to watch and so many different things you have to keep up with. All right. So one of the big things with Blood Death Knight is you have to be able to keep up with your stats. All right. So our primary stat is first and foremost is going to be haste. All right. Well, let me rephrase this. All right. I run the hero talents of Sand Lane. I'll get into talents and reasons why. So this video is going to be geared more towards running Sand Lane, and it's going to be geared more towards how you play as a Sand Lane tank, not going to be jumping hero talents. I know both of them are viable. Both of them are good in their own right. However, I believe that Sand Lane is just slightly better. Most people will say that it's not because of the damage. However, I don't think that a damage boost is worth sacrificing your survivability, especially if you're going to play a Blood Death Knight. So, with that being said, our stat alignment is going to go into haste. Primary stat will be haste, and that's what we really want. Secondary stat is going to be mastery, because that's going to benefit our self healing, and it's going to benefit our death strike. All right, and any type of absorb. So our self sustainability is going to come from mastery. Now, with that being said, crit and verse are not that far behind. Um, so versatility is not good for plate tanks. In general, I've talked about that in a couple other guides. But with that being said, on a Death Knight, versatility is better than it is for any other. Now, you don't want to stack your versatility, but you also don't want to completely ignore it. You don't want it to be sitting at baseline like you would on most other tanks. All right. So having a little bit of versatility is not a bad thing, but don't stack it. So if like the best piece you can get is like a mastery and versatility piece, that's okay. You'll be fine. The reason we want critical strike is because our death strike is going to benefit from it, as well as our mirror rend and our heart strike. They will all three benefit from, because death strike, it'll give us better damage, which means better healing. Our mirror rend means that it's going to do better damage, which means it's going to give us our better bone shield charges, and our heart strike is our one of our AoEs, so it's going to hit everybody that much harder. Blood boil will benefit, and so will consumption. However, not nearly as much as the other three. All right. So with that being said, you want to prioritize haste and mastery, then crit, and if you have no other choice, then your versatility. But versatility is not an avoid stat by any stretch of the imagination for a Blood Death Knight. All right. Now, so this is the this is the talent tree that I use, and this is what I've spec'd into. It offers what I believe to be the best survivability and the best defensiveness that you can get to help you survive that much better on different things, or on different encounters. And so I think that Blood Death Knight doesn't really have many talents that are just like, oh, you have to have this, you have to have this. Like you don't have a lot of that. Maybe some instances. I think the closest thing we have is the fact that Mind Freeze is a talent instead of a baseline ability that you want to have an interrupt, but at the same time, depending on what you're doing, you can talent into other things based around that. All right. So with that being said, these are the talents that be working with and what you want to look at running. All right. So next up, let's talk about our defensives. Okay. So on the face of it, Blood Death Knight really doesn't have a whole lot of defensives. All right. They're not bad. They're not good. They're just kind of there. You do have your anti magic shell and you have your anti magic zone. Basically, what these are going to do is they're going to reduce magic damage, which is group utility as well as personal utility. and so you can um, help out your healer or help out like people who maybe don't have as much magic protection as what other people do. All right. Then we have our Icebound Fortitude. So it's just a flat 30% damage reduction, and it makes you immune to stun effects. That's pretty much all it's going to do. It's not a bad defensive, but on a 2-minute cooldown is kind of ridiculous. Then we have our Lichborn, which is it's a 6% increase to our leech, and it reduces the damage we take by 15%. This one is a little bit stronger. Leech is very useful for us, and the damage reduction does help. But in the grand scheme of things, this isn't something that you want to just like press it on cooldown. It's not as good as what it would appear to be. Um, Vampiric Blood, though, this is one of the ones that we kind of want to use in almost any and every situation. Whereas our Lichborn and our Icebound Fortitude, they're longer cooldowns, so you want to be smart about how you use them. Vampiric Blood is only a 1.5-minute cooldown. All right, and you can take a talent that causes your Death Strike and any runic power that you spend to reduce that cooldown. So you can essentially get this to about a 30 to 45-second cooldown and have it up for quite a few situations and really whatever you need it to be. And it's going to increase our maximum health by 30%, increase the healing and absorbs that we receive. So this one of the things that I've said a lot about Death Knight is they benefit a lot from Discipline Priests, and Discipline will always do very, very well with Blood Death Knight, because if Vampiric Blood is up, then the Atonement healing and the bubble shield that they're putting on us is going to be increased by 40%, which makes us surviving that much easier. And having a 30% increase to our health is absolutely insane, and it does so much for us to live through different attacks, melee attacks, until the healer can stay on top of it, so you can get yourself on top of it, whatever you need to do. Vampiric Blood is probably the best cooldown, or the best defensive cooldown that we have in our arsenal. All right. Next up, we have Rune Tap, which reduces damage taken by 20% for 4 seconds. So, as of the last I saw, Rune Tap does not stack, which is kind of an issue. I think that if you're going to give us 2 charges, then you should definitely allow it to stack, given that you can stack a lot of other defenses with 2 charges. But hey, it's whatever. Rune Tap is really good for precasting before you go into a fight, or once you pull everything that you need to and you're positioning yourself, then you can rune tap. And once rune tap is, or while rune tap is going off, then you're set up. You're pretty much squared away to take that initial damage. So you can go through your opener and you can start getting everything else rolling. So rune tap is definitely a precast, or it's a I'm setting up. I can't take too much damage. Let me do it. All right. Next up, we have Tombstone. So Tombstone is actually fed by your bone shield, and it basically it's an absorb to 6% of your maximum health, right? So it gives you an absorb shield, which again your Tombstone can play into your vampiric blood. So if you Tombstone and then you vampiric blood, you will get that 40% additional buff from vampiric blood applied to your Tombstone, which gives you extra time to get through things and to start living. All right. One of the biggest keys to being successful as a Blood Death Knight is managing your defensives and making sure that they rotate properly. All right. So, Tombstone, every time at 7 charges of Bone Shield, you should use Tombstone on cooldown. If you need to burn off Bone Shield, you should be using Tombstone and you should use Bone Storm. All right. So, Bone Storm is pretty much like it's a self healing and a damage. So it's very, very nice to have for like AoE damage, and it's very nice to have for like a little bit of self healing, but it's not something that you want to prioritize. You have a lot of other things that are going to prioritize, or that you want to prioritize above all else. All right, so now let's get into our rotation. All right, so there are 2 things that we need to make sure that we have 100% uptime on. All right, the first thing is going to be our Death and Decay. Death and Decay, you have Death and Decay down every second of every pull. You should have 100% uptime, and you should be standing in it every single time. All right. Now, With that being said, it's also going to benefit our Heart Strike, which is one of the other things we want because that's more AoE damage, it's more threat generation. Okay, our Heart Strike is going to hit 2 targets. If we're standing in Death and Decay, it's going to hit 5 targets. Excuse me. So at a 5 target bonus, this just made Heart Strike a huge threat generator, and it generates runic power to help us. All right, and if you have to run away for whatever reason, there's a movement speed reduction. All right, it's not. I've never personally used Heart Strike for that, but I guess if you are kind of up a creek without a paddle, maybe. All right. So we want to have 100% uptime on our Death and Decay, and we want to have 100% uptime. Wrong spell. We want to have 100% uptime on Mirror Rend. The reason why we want to use Mirror Rend and have our 100% uptime is because it's going to give us Bone Shield. It's going to generate 3 charges. All right. I believe there's a talent that makes the critical strike of Mirror Rend generate 1 or 2 extra charges of Bone Shield. All right. Now, the reason why is because Bone Shield is an armor increase for us, and it's going to benefit us that much more. And so as long as we have uptime on our bone shields, we'll be fine. We're gonna be okay. All right. So as far as self sustainability goes, obviously we have our defensives that we can use. Different ones do different things. All right. But we have Death Strike. What Death Strike is going to do is it's going to heal you for 30.9% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds. The minimum that it can heal you is 8.5% of your maximum health. So it's going to hit for damage. So you're going to do 338,000 damage, and then you're also going to heal for 30% of that damage with a minimum of 8.5%. So at a minimum, every time you use it, you're getting 8.5% of your health back. Now, if you take a lot of damage, like you're on a big pull, like the first pull of Floodgate, there's a lot of damage coming in. Your Death Strike can literally take you from like 5% health to 100% health because there's so much incoming damage. If you have defensives up and if you have the ability to, you can ignore a mechanic, eat the mechanic, Death Strike, and then heal yourself back up. You just have to be careful not to eat the mechanic and die. That is one of the biggest issues that Death Knights have is while we're trying to get set up, you die to melee attacks because you don't have anything set up. So it's very important that you precast, and it's very important that you use your Death Strike as often as you are able to. All right. So in general, the rotation is not super crazy. All right. You want to Mirror Rend, and you want to have 7 to 10 stacks of Bone Shield. You want a Heart Strike, Death Strike on cooldown. You want a Blood Boil with more than 3 targets, and that's really what you're doing. That is pretty much it. So we'll go through. All right. Go ahead, and I'm gonna drop my Death and Decay. I'm gonna Blood Boil, hit my Heart Strike. I've got my 7. Then I'm gonna go into Death Strike, Blood Boil. All right. And then you can kind of play around. So now you see I've got my 11 stacks of Bone Shield, so now I can redrop that. And now I can use this, I can use this, and I can rebuild my stacks. You can go in, and you've got so many different options that you can do as far as like how you're using your defensives, what you're doing. Your biggest thing is watching these bone strikes or these bone shields to make sure that they're staying up, and watching your Death and Decay to make sure that it is staying down at 100% uptime. Now we do have Dancing Rune Weapon. It's basically going to mirror it. So essentially, whatever you do, it's going to do that as well, and it's going to bolster or it's going to add to your defensives, right? So if you Heart Strike, you're going to basically Heart Strike twice. So then your minimum will become 17% healing back. Whenever you use your Mirror Rend, it's going to Mirror Rend too. So instead of you gaining those 3, now you've just gained 6 stacks. Your Blood Boil, it's going to apply the multiple stacks of it. If you're standing in your Death and Decay, everything that's bolstered, it's going to bolster that too. So your Heart Strike inside of Death and Decay, instead of just it hitting, those 5 enemies inside Death and Decay, 2 outside of Death and Decay, with it up, now you can hit 10 enemies, or you can hit 5 enemies twice. So it's definitely going to help you out. It's going to work for you. And on the front, like Blood Death Knight is a phenomenally built tank, and it's really going. It looks like it can do really well, but if you fall behind, if you mess up your defensives, if you don't heart strike, if you don't keep up with your defensives, then it is going to struggle. You can run some defensive trinkets to kind of help you out a little bit. There's a lot that is much more beneficial than that, so I don't recommend it, but it is an option for you. All right. So that's going to be it for our Blood Death Knight guide. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have anything to add or anything that I left out, forgot to add in here, then by all means, leave a comment. Let me know. If you guys want to see more content like this, like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.